Hi there. Have you ever noticed how unfair it is? Whenever someone talks about the Jungle Book adaptations these days, they usually only mention 2 or 3 versions. The latest live-action films, the Soviet adaptation, or the classic Disney one. But what about the rest? The truth is, there are way more adaptations than most people realize. In this 3-part video and literature series, I'm going to give a quick rundown of every version, from the most well-known to the ones almost no one remembers. In this part, we'll be focusing only on animated adaptations. This script has been sitting on my hard drive for months, and I finally decided it's time to bring it to life. So let's begin with the very first animated adaptation. Disney's The Jungle Book, 1967. We're starting with the earliest animated version, Disney's 1967 The Jungle Book. We'll go through the rest in chronological order. I watched this one as an adult, and honestly, I don't get why people still hold it in such high regard. Yes, the music is good, I'll admit that. I even catch myself humming I Wanna Be Like You from time to time. But aside from that, the positives kind of stop there. The plot? Technically, there is one, get Mowgli to the man village, but it's constantly interrupted by unrelated mini-stories. The elephant march, the cold layers, the fight with Shere Khan, and none of it really connects. It's more like a string of loosely stitched together scenes than a cohesive narrative. And don't get me started on the characters. Kaa, Hati, and Baloo, 3 of the wisest and strongest characters in Kipling's stories, were turned into clowns. The elephants became a parody of the military, Kaa became a bumbling would-be villain, and Baloo, he's basically a prototype of Timon and Pumbaa, comic relief with barely any depth. There's really not much more to say.
2. Mowgli, 1967, USSR. Let's move on. Next is the Soviet adaptation by Soyuz Multfilm, which came out just a bit later than Disney's version. And this one is where things get more interesting. In fact, this was the first adaptation I ever watched, and I think that's true for a lot of people who grew up in certain parts of the world. Overall, it's already a step up. The plot still isn't tightly connected. We get 2 introductory episodes, followed by 3 more that don't have a strong narrative thread, but at least there's some structure. And if we look at the big picture, this version actually sticks closest to Kipling's original story, even though some morals are downplayed and certain things are simplified. It also has a very surreal tone. Some of the animal's traits are exaggerated. For example, Bagheera's cat-like agility and speed are taken so far that she basically teleports. Now, let's talk about the positives. First of all, the voice acting. Sure, the original audio has some mixing issues. I found plenty while doing a CinemaSin-style breakdown for my Russian language channel, but the cast? Easily my favorite voice cast among all Jungle Book adaptations, no exaggeration. Another big plus, the animation, especially the movement. Not every character is animated smoothly, some move a bit stiffly, but characters like Bagheera are just beautifully animated. And you know how fans of this version defend the mistakes? They say, it's not a mistake, it's just the style. So wait, when other cartoons have mistakes, they're just bad, but here it's style? Okay, sure. Of course, the version isn't perfect. Mowgli tends to be a bit of a Mary Sue, the villains lack strong motivation, and many secondary characters feel underdeveloped. But overall, this is still a solid adaptation. Let's keep going.
3. Mowgli Brothers, 1977. Now we're entering the category of adaptations that not everyone knows, not everyone remembers. This was actually a new discovery for me. I only learned about it while researching for this video. You might have seen some clips floating around the internet. A surreal-looking animated film with purple wolves and a white Shere Khan. Yeah, that's this one.
This short film adapts only the very first chapter of The Jungle Book and does it almost word for word. And you know what surprised me the most? Mowgli is completely naked at the beginning. Like, literally. He only gets his little shorts halfway through the film, when he stumbles into a village and gets tangled in some drying laundry. There's not much to say about the plot, since it's a direct adaptation of a single chapter. So if you've read the book, you already know exactly what happens. The prologue and the moment Shere Khan tries to manipulate the wolves into turning against Akela. The art style is very unique. Every character has a bizarre design, especially Tabaki. Though believe it or not, this isn't the weirdest version of Tabaki we'll talk about. That one's coming later. And honestly, that's about all I can say about this version. Let's move on.
4. The Jungle Book, Mowgli, 1989, Japan. Now we come to the version that I can confidently say is the best. This is a Japanese adaptation from the well-known studio Nippon Animation, and it was actually the second Jungle Book adaptation I ever saw in my life. And here, for the first time, I want to talk about dubbing and complain a little. As a kid, I couldn't even make it to the end of this series because of how bad the Russian dub was. The lip syncing was horrible, and nowhere was it worse than in the final episode. Lines were thrown in completely out of sync, characters spoke too early, too late, or even spoke other characters' lines in the wrong voice. The translation itself was also a mess. Thankfully, years later, a Ukrainian dub came out, and I was finally able to enjoy the show the way it was meant to be experienced. And there's a lot to enjoy. For the first time in this ranking, the episodes are connected by a continuous story. Yes, there are major changes to the original plot, but the Japanese team handled these changes so well, with such care and purpose, that the anime feels like a legitimate remake of Kipling's story rather than a loose adaptation. It adds drama. It adds weight. It's even darker than the Soviet version. I'd call it the bloodiest adaptation of all. There's actually a video on YouTube that counts all the deaths in the series. The death count goes over 300. For comparison, the Soviet version probably has under 100, and that's mostly thanks to the battle with the Red Dogs. This version also finally gives us Mowgli's development on screen. He feels like a real person. Someone once tried to argue with me, but real children would adapt to their environment. Mowgli here is too emotional. But that's the point. He's adapting right in front of us. He grows up before our eyes, not off-screen like in some other versions. And one of the biggest strengths of this version is its side characters. Even Shere Khan is given proper motivation, along with most of the other villains, except for the Red Dogs, of course, but they don't need a reason. They're basically the jokers of Kipling's world. Chaos incarnate. We also get characters like Lala, who at first seems like a typical bully, but gradually evolves into a deep, compelling anti-heroine with a powerful backstory. And that's just one example. This adaptation is full of them.
5. The Jungle Book, 1990, Golden Films. And we're back to the land of forgotten adaptations. In fact, the next two entries are from the same obscure category. Story-wise, this one is once again based on Mowgli's brothers, but with some creative liberties. The first thing you'll notice, the animals walk on two legs. Shere Khan is apparently a pirate, yes, with an eye patch. And Baloo, he looks like some weird off-brand version of Freddy Fazbear. But that's not even the weirdest part. What happened to Mowgli? For some reason, this version of Mowgli is chubby, which is definitely a first. And let me ask you, when you imagine Mowgli, what hair color comes to mind? Usually dark brown or black, right? Well, in this one, he's ginger. He literally looks like a cartoonish troublemaker from some old Soviet satire cartoon. Completely off-model from anything you'd expect. There are plenty of other strange little details, but overall, this adaptation is just nothing special. The story is a condensed, oversimplified retelling, and the characters don't even reach the depth of the Disney version. Let's move on.
6. The Jungle Book, 1993. Next up we have... Oh, no. Oh, God. I really didn't want to come back to this one. Honestly, if it weren't for this version, I wouldn't have even discovered the previous one. YouTube recommended me a video review of this disaster, and while watching that, I stumbled upon the 1990 Golden Films version. Story-wise? Yeah, you guessed it. We're once again retelling Mowgli's brothers and Kaa's hunting. There's really nothing new here. The plot is just a worn-out, copy-paste summary of the book. Zero surprises. But let's talk about the characters, because oh boy. Remember how I said that the Tabaki in Mowgli's Brothers 1977 wasn't even the weirdest one? Well, here he is, the worst Tabaki of all time. He's on your screen now, and I'm not even going to comment. He's just awful. Mowgli himself, slightly better, just slightly. But Baloo, what did they do to you, my guy? They gave him this creepy human-like belly, and I'm not joking, a man-boob chest. Why? Why did they think that was a good idea? There's really no point in discussing this version any further. Let's move on quickly.
7. The Jungle Book, 1995. Now let's take a break from the horrific visuals of the last two versions and look at something a little more pleasant. This 1995 adaptation is, at the very least, easier on the eyes. Story-wise, it's basically the same as the previous two, so once again, not much to say about the plot. But what's interesting is that this version is a co-production between a Japanese and an American studio, though I honestly couldn't figure out which ones. Still, you can definitely feel the Japanese influence here. The background art and certain stylistic choices almost feel like they were pulled from the Nippon Animation version. Okay, I lied. Let's touch on the story just a little. This one at least adds some variety. While the last two adaptations only covered the first couple of chapters, this one also includes Tiger Tiger. At the end of the film, Mowgli enters the Man Village, making this the last animated version to feature Mesua and Baldio. Though Baldio isn't even named here, and he doesn't really provoke Mowgli the way he does in the original story. There's no real tension or final conflict, just an ending.
Number 8. Jungle Cubs, 1996. Let's also briefly talk about a spin-off, Disney's Jungle Cubs, from 1996. Originally, I planned to just mention it at the very end of the video, but fine, let's give it its own spot. There's really not much to say. It's just a light children's cartoon. The premise? The familiar characters from the Disney's Jungle Book, but as kids. That's it. Interestingly, this is the first and last time Disney ever used the Red Dogs, the Doles, as villains. In the Soviet adaptation, they were portrayed as wild, brutal dogs. In the anime, they were much more accurate, closely resembling the red wolves Kipling described. And here, they look like weird coyotes or something, completely unrecognizable. And that's about it.
8. The Jungle Book 2, 2003. And now we've reached the second-to-last animated adaptation, Disney's official sequel to their 1967 version. And you know what? I actually liked this one a bit more than the original. Not by much, but still. For once, there's an actual storyline here. We get to see Mowgli's life after joining the Man Village. Mowgli is now adopted by two completely nameless parents, and he has a foster sister, Shanti, the same girl with the water jug from the end of the first film, and a younger foster brother, Ranjan. His relationship with Shanti is, let's call it complicated. He and Ranjan like to mess with her. Mowgli, of course, wants to go back to the jungle, and the adults try to stop him. Then Baloo shows up, and we're back in the jungle again. The wolf pack? Nowhere to be seen. The village starts searching for Mowgli, and Baloo takes him to an abandoned city, which has now been turned into an animal resort. Apparently, King Louie has moved away, according to Baloo. Quick side note, this reminds me of the show Tailspin,
which is loosely connected to the Jungle Book. In that show, Baloo is a cargo pilot, and King Louie is his bartender buddy. It's almost like Louie's plan to become human using fire actually worked, in a really weird, roundabout way. Back to the film. Shere Khan eventually shows up, of course. Ranjan and Shanti join the auction, and together they help defeat him. And here's something that surprised me. Mowgli actually develops as a character in this one. Unlike the original, his relationship with Shanti evolves, from awkward and forced to actually feeling like real family by the end. It's still not a great film, but at least it's better than the first, even if only slightly. If you saw my ranking video, you might remember that the sequel sits just above the original in my list. One major complaint though, why didn't they use Buldare as the villain? The story is literally set in the village, and yet they went back to Shere Khan again. Ironically, according to early versions of the script, Buldeo was originally supposed to appear at the end of the first film, but that idea was dropped. Anyway, time to move on to our final animated adaptation.
9. The Jungle Book, 2010. So, The Jungle Book is, by nature, a story set in India. But oddly enough, this next one is the only animated adaptation actually made in India. Yep, we're back to multi-episode formats, but this time, unlike the Japanese anime, there's no ongoing storyline. Each episode is self-contained, and you can watch them in any order, though I wouldn't recommend watching them at all, honestly. The series uses characters and locations from the book. That's about it. Main places include Council Rock, Cold Layers, the jungle, and the mountains. Every episode follows the same formula. Baloo and Bagheera try to teach Mowgli something, conflict happens, and somehow Shere Khan gets involved, and episode ends. That's it, over and over again. Now, I don't know if this is 100% confirmed, but it definitely feels like the creators were, let's say, inspired by the Japanese anime. Why? Well, meet Lolly. No, not Lala from the anime. They're different characters, sure, but the name similarity is suspicious. More importantly, there's a character called Faonya, a red panda. And in the anime, we had Kichi, also a red panda. Here's a frame from the anime and a frame from the Indian series. Don't you see the resemblance? And just like Kichi, Faonya serves the same narrative role, a loyal, comedic, emotional companion. Coincidence? Maybe, but probably not. And finally, the visuals. This is a 3D animated show, and the graphics get a lot of hate. But honestly, they're not that bad. Are they good? Not really, but definitely better than the 1990 and 1993 versions we talked about earlier. Final thoughts. And that's it. We've now covered every animated adaptation of The Jungle Book, at least the ones I could find. Some are genuine masterpieces like the 1989 anime. Others are forgettable messes. Looking at you, 1993? In the next episode of this series, I'll go over the live-action versions. Trust me, some are very interesting. But for now, that's the end of this part. Thanks for reading, and I'll see you in the next one.